Well, welcome everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Inworld Review. This is our little avatar chat show where we discuss interesting things happening in the open metaverse, the hypergrid, open sim, and sometimes various other places too. We weren't with you last week, so this is our first show in a fortnight. Apologies for that. We've stopped sticking to every week unless we can get a decent lineup of guests for you, basically. And that indeed we have this week. Let me see, before I forget, it is the 11th of February of the year we're now firmly in, which is 2018. And it's only a matter of time before I announce it as 1918 and declare the end of the war. I don't know, sorry. Right, so interesting lineup of guests we've got for you this week. First off, I'll mention James Outloud, who's always on the panel here with me, although he's principally concerned with mixing all our video cameras and overlays together. So welcome, James.
Well, thank you so much, Mel, and I'm just happy to be here and listen. It's a great conversation.
Yeah, and you're doing it on a nice brand new system, so there you go.
That has pluses and minuses, right?
We won't go into the reasons for that, other than say, get your act together, Microsoft. Right. Moving on. To my far, my far left, probably your far right. So we've got another person who you're very familiar with. He's joins us pretty frequently, really. And it's none other than John Lester, or Pathfinder Lester, as you probably know him. So welcome, Pathfinder.
Hello, great to be here again.
Great to see you again too, and the first time for the new year, so I wish you a happy new year.
Yeah, happy new year.
First time you've been on the show this year, I think. Okay, now today's guest, I don't really know how to announce this. I guess in the case of both of them, they work together. We're really sort of dealing in areas related to education. Of course, this is very much Pathfinder's territory too. The Hypergrid Safari, which is a little club of us that go around jumping all over the hypergrid every Wednesday. Well, we meet on Frankogrid at noon. This coming week, one of the locations we're going to be going to is Genome. And we will be meeting there. And if you care to join us, hint, hint, you too will be able to meet the two guests I've got on the show today. Anyway, I'll go introduce them in turn. My first guest is Nova Saunders. I do know Nova because of her involvement with various conferences, and I think VWPE in particular, I think. Am I right in thinking that, Nova? On
yes,
various
you
occasions.
are.
Yes, indeed.
And thank you for being having me on your show. I appreciate this.
Yes, and you are welcome. And my other guest, I'm going to be calling her Chloe. I've got her here as Chloe Greenwood. She's also known in world as Carolyn Lowe, and the official pronunciation is Chloe. But I'm going to call her Chloe. Welcome, Chloe.
Welcome. Sorry. And actually, it is Chloe. It's Lowe is the last name. That was my pronunciation correction there. It's okay, but it is Chloe, and I've been doing virtual world education stuff since 2007.
Very good. Okay, well, now we've got this sort. I've got Pathfinder, I've got Chloe, I've got Nova, and I've got James. And I've got me. Gosh, golly. Right, okay. So we're going to move into that sort of territory. Now, before we get started, I'm going to actually just ask James to go over to our left-hand screen. He'll know the one I mean. Just some sort of public service announcements to get over before we start the show proper. First, upcoming events, VR Evolutions or V Revolutions. I'm told it doesn't matter how you pronounce it. That's the idea. Happening on March 15th to 17th. This is actually the title of this year's Virtual World's Best Practices in Education Conference. It will be happening, in fact, primarily in the closed world of Linden Lab's Second Life. There is sometimes some open metaverse strands to it, although I have yet to know whether that is the case this year. The weekend after that, there is another conference. This will be our first proper Hypergrid International Expo. We obviously had the rather acclaimed one we did back in December, which was our kind of beta run. And of course, immediately got inundated by people wanting to do presentations for the new one. This is a multi-language conference. The beta one was had 4 sort of half-day kind of sessions: French, German, Italian, and Spanish. I know for a fact that in March we will also have a strand which is Portuguese. And quite possibly we'll bounce it out at 3 a day, so we might have another language there too. And this show, in one form or another, normally does the halftime show. Imagine the Super Bowl and imagine me and some talking heads, and you got it. And we do that in English, you'll be pleased to know. So there is a little bit of English coverage there too, and we have translations going on throughout the event. So if you, when you arrive, if you join the English language group, you will be getting translations in that group channel as presentations are going on. Presentations that you might otherwise not understand. So we're looking forward to that. That actually, of course, is that weekend after Virtual World's Best Practices. Unfortunately, near miss. Somebody almost set it to collide, and I had to step in at the last minute. Right, out on the Hypergrid, Tangle Grid, of course, still have their Sci-Fi Expo going on. It started earlier in the week, and it's going on to March the 5th. A lot of little reports from people posting about their visits there, saying how great it is, and some great stuff there. It's basically a multi-grid expo, even though it's on Tangle Grid. People can come in from all over and exhibit their goods. And these days you can even buy goods there because they are an active Globit grid. So if you have a Globit account, which is a kind of a multi-grid currency system, then you can obviously buy things there to take home with you. And I'm sure there's a lot of freebies there too. Wherever there's paid stuff, there's usually some freebies to be picked up as well. So that's going on, as I say. It's going on right now and continues to March the 5th. And a couple of weeks ago, we had Leslie from Tangle Grid on the show talking about it, if you want to listen to our archives. And finally, something that's finished and gone. Why is that there? Never mind. Okay, so that's it for the slides up there. Basically a quick update as to what's going on. And as I said, on Wednesday at noon, we of course have our regular Hypergrid Safari. We meet at a region called HG Safari, which is on the Franco grid, and you pick up landmarks and teleports and things, and we jump off from there. And somewhere on that excursion, we will be going to none other than Genome, or Genome. How should I best pronounce it?
Genome.
Genome. Gee whiz, Genome. Okay. I don't know why I always go for Genome. So, okay, Genome will... I'll have to get that in my head, won't I? Okay, and I'm going to ask... well, I'm actually going to ask both of you, just before we go into details of your history and all the stuff that's going on, of which I've got notes here. What can we expect when Safari comes on Wednesday? Let me start with you, Nova. Oh.
I have absolutely no idea what's going to take place because that's Chloe's region. I'm on the other side of the grid.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good start. Okay, in that case, Chloe, what have you got in store for the Safari people when they descend on you in all their avatar masses?
Well, actually, Genome was built by Max Chatnoir. She has a version in Second Life, and we persuaded her to create a version here. She's hopefully going to be there, but I will definitely be there. And my plan is that the Safari people will actually get to do the activities because it's all interactive. You learn about genes and DNA and all that kind of cool stuff. You get to look at the genes of peas and flowers and llamas, and it's just a whole lot of fun. And I would like for people to actually be able to participate.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I should point out here that the Genome Grid and some of the other projects you're involved with, although they're on the hypergrid, they will allow us to come in and visit and stuff. It's what Maria Kovaloff used to call I've forgotten the phrase now. The underbelly of the metaverse. Because you have kids in for education and things like that, you're not fully hypergrid enabled. You don't want kids running out of their classrooms or their playrooms onto the greater hypergrid. So you're not always publicly accessible. And I gather the region will be brought up, especially for us to visit and experience what I guess we'll call them students are normally experiencing. So
Genome is always up. The only area that's not is the Biome for Kids grid. And I can talk about that more, but the rest of it is all hypergridable as long as the server, the grids are up. We sometimes take down some of them like when Nova had her tour, we took down the rest of them so that it didn't crash. And I'll probably do the same thing. We're all part of Vibe, and I can tell you more about Vibe when you're ready for me.
Sure. Okay, yes, I know that feeling. If you're sharing a server, that you can't always have 1,000 avatars on all of the grids on the same server. In fact, you probably can't even have them on one, but that's beside the point. Right, okay, well, while we're talking to you, Chloe, you were kind enough to send me, although I only picked them up a couple of hours ago, sort of, I won't say a biography, but there's quite a lot of material that you literally pasted into Skype. So I'm going to sort of... you can sort of tell us about yourself. I'm just going to look down here for a few clues. You actually start off with the history of Vibe, so that's a good place to start, I think, where you say it began in ScienceSim, which was an early OpenSim grid, and then you did get this your own server, which I presume is the one you were just talking about, and you're housed at the Northern Michigan University. I see. And then you moved there and got a bigger server. Yeah, that's the idea. Bigger server, please. So you currently housed at Michigan University, and it's managed by, we know this name, Stephen Gaznoir, I think, or Stephen Fly Inworld, and you, of course, with hands-on assisted when needed by IT folks, etc. at the university. Early on, Mary Ann Clark of Texas Wesleyan University, this is Max Shatnar, who you mentioned, and Marion Schmetzler, who of course is sitting here as Nova, were also part of the team and are still active participants in Vibe. So before I move on to this wonderful, well, actually I'm going to read it out because I'm determined to read out this wonderful I'm going to continue before I bring you in, okay? Chloe, which is you, had 2 biology-based education sims in Second Life, Biome and Biome 2, which lost funding and are no longer there. Yes, that's Lyndon House for you. Max has a genetics-based sim genome, which is, of course, the one we're principally coming to. Both you, Chloe, and Max have some content on Nova Sim in Second Life. And this is the bit I wanted to get to. Currently, you have 2 grids in the Vibe community, Biome and Biome for Kids. And this was the bit I was really interested in, the definition of them, really. Both are framed by Earth systems education, in which the Earth is studied not by typical science disciplines, in other words, biology, chemistry, physics, and earth science, but by overarching components of the Earth, such as atmosphere, geosphere, hydrosphere, and biosphere. I was dying to say that. Right. Now, you might need to explain that to some of our listeners, viewers, as we go along. But the various sims all contain activities, a pleasant environment, and classrooms. In Biome for Kids, which you just mentioned, the kids one, the classrooms are inside a volcano and a flying saucer and a treehouse and a steampunk submarine. Now, you've written plenty more, but I'm going to stop there for now and actually hand it to you. Tell us about Vibe. You know, I've given you the nice little summary you gave me, but I'm sure there's much more to tell as far as its history and slant is concerned.
Well, I had set up Stephen Gager, Zootfly, got a hold of me because I had Biome set up and it was being used by university students in Second Life. And then Max had Genome. She still has Genome in Second Life as well. And you're free to visit that. But he approached us about Science M, and I'm not real sure when. I think, well, Nova was part of that then as well. It was funded by IBM, I believe. I can't even remember. It's been a while.
I remember Science Sim, actually. I think you're right. I think there was an IBM connection there.
And so there was a grant there, and it ran out. And when it ran out, we were able to get a very ancient server from Dodge Three Beards, who's in Second Life, if you know him. Anyway, he shipped a server to Stephen, who was at the University of New Orleans at the time. And so we started our little Vibe grid. And at that time, it was just Biome and Nova and Vibe. And then Max came in, added kind of cloned her genome to that as much as possible. And then, and she's added a lot to it as well. And then I decided to start the kids grid, the Biome for Kids, which I run security on, and it is not open for hypergridding. It's only for kids and teachers. Kids don't have to be there as part of their school, but it's only for kids and teachers. So we were running out of server space. We were having a lot of problems. And so I applied for an internal grant at the university. And the dean said, I love this because people from your department never ask for this kind of equipment. So here's the money. Go buy yourself a server.
Oh,
so
very good.
It's still running. I have retired from the university, so I'm not using it with university students any longer. But it's still running and using it with kids, and hope to get some more university students from other places in there.
Wonderful. So this principally is what we'll be seeing on Wednesday. Now, Biome and Genome in Vibe were used by courses. Okay, now I'm going to be repeating what you just told us there, if I repeat that. Okay. Tell me a bit more just about Biome for Kids. You say kids can participate in online activities developed by yourself, but you find that their favorite way to learn science is actually building content. And you mentioned that was the focus of a presentation at VWP, I guess, last year. If they build it, they will come. That was it. Yeah. Okay. I like my catchphrases here. Right. So tell us how the thing with kids works. I mean, basically, it's an online facility for kids now, although, as you say, it's not tied to an exact physical classroom or anything. It's an activity area for them. Is it completely science-based and that's its sole objective, or do you introduce kids to, a more conceptual understanding of virtual worlds at the same time?
Yes, actually, there are slides a little later on that show some of what they've done, and the presentation is this year at VWBPE.
Oh.
So that presentation will be given this year. And I have had classrooms in there, but kids are also welcome to come in on their own and build. Let me give you a little example of my experience with kids. I had fifth graders in. When we very first opened it, we had a teacher who brought her classes in, and or her class in, and they were fifth graders, so they would be 10, I guess. Anyway, 10 years old. So I had all these slides, 20 slides on how to build. And so I'm on a slide 4, right? And this kid types in, Chloe, if we make our water phantom, can we swim in this swimming pool we built?
Oh, yeah.
Now, these kids had never been in a virtual world. A couple of them had been in Minecraft, but they just knew. It was just intuitive for them. So I just thought I was just wasting my time. I just left the slides up if they wanted them. Yeah. And so when we get to those slides, I will show you what the kids have made. Now, I do have activities that I built in there that they can do. So there's different things that I created, but they really, really like to demonstrate their learning by building. But they can go in. There's 2. I had one island where you could build on. Now I've had to add another one. But they can build, they can practice. If it's just squares or stuff they got out of their inventory, I'd delete it. Right. But there's some really cool stuff that the kids have built.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think the best thing to do is, I don't know about the particular order, but we'll look through the slides now, actually, as we continue talking about what's in them. Pathfinder, by the way, have you any pertinent questions at this point you'd like to ask as well? I know this is really your field.
No, I just think it's great that a project like this is still going on. I mean, it's been going on for a while. When did it first start? I can't remember. Years.
It's a good few years. It's probably not 10, but sure. I mean, Science Sim, for example, was an very early grade. I think Science Sim predated the Hypergrid. So it's a fair old time. Okay, well, I'm going to get James to move our camera up to the slides we have loaded up here on the right. Let's see, I've got them. Yeah, as I say, they're going to be in a bit of a random order, I think. A logo there, simply for Biome, I think. We'll move forward from that. Okay, can you actually see these slides, Chloe, as can you come around to see them as I'm moving them?
Yes, I can see them just fine.
Yeah, the first one, this is a wind farm, isn't it? I presume those are tulips on the ground. I'm not quite sure. Maybe
actually,
tell us about it.
That's corn. That's corn for biofuel.
Right.
This was all built by kids, and the wind farm actually turns and makes noise. Right. They were 12 and 13 when they built this. It's better than what I was really impressed. I mean, they built the corn from Prims. But they have posters up in other places that show the different types of fuels, alternative fuels, and the benefits and drawbacks and so on and so forth. And this just was one of the pictures of some of the stuff that the kids had made.
Okay, let's move to the next one. The phases of the moon, love it. Right. Okay, whole different kettle of fish here, I think. Tell us about this one, moon phases.
Okay, this is just posters that they uploaded, but they really like to do that, and they created that texture out of something, I'm not sure what, that was the moon surface. But they started this one school in particular, they started wanting to do all of their projects for science in Biome for Kids. And so this was one of their projects. And actually, when I went to take pictures of this a couple days ago, I had never seen this one before. So it's new to me, the phases of the moon. But I just thought it was an example of, pretty low tech. They didn't have to build anything, but they would get in there and chat. Now, here's something I want to bring up while I'm thinking about it, that this class in particular had two students that had special needs.
Right.
I didn't know which students they were. On my end, I couldn't tell. So it completely evens out all of their disabilities. And I think that's wonderful.
Levels the playing field is the expression, I think, isn't it? You just, yeah, we find out a lot in virtual worlds. The limitation, in fact, some people say it's almost a golden age because, maybe the future we're going to have holographic, photorealistic avatars and things, and there'll be no fiction, as it were, to it left. It's almost as though the limitations of the platform at the moment are a great equalizer. Because it enables people to do things, and it's fully immersive, but how can I say this? Things like prejudices don't occur so often because there's no obvious tangible things like we have in the physical world, which shall we say less than pleasant people latch onto, and exhibit prejudices. Same with disabilities and things. You're seeing the result of ability rather than even having a concept of disability. Does that make sense?
It does. And there's something else in Biome for Kids. In Second Life, I'm most often a tiny, if you're familiar with Raglanshire and the tinies.
Oh, yes, love them.
But I liked little animals. And so I asked the very, very first group that came in, I said, do you want to be kids or animals? They all wanted to be animals. And then it came out that by having everybody be an animal, and by the way, they're pretty primitive. They don't look anything like the Winx animals because I built them all, and I just use prims. I don't know how to mesh. And so anyway, but there they are. And there's other ones. There's like ladybugs and turtles and things they wanted, but there's no gender. There's no, when you start talking about 7th and 8th graders, it's like, okay, do I make boobs or do I not make boobs? Yeah. Well, if you're a panda, you don't have boobs. So it really has, that has been a really positive thing. So they get to pick their animal. They can change their animal at any time, and they think that's fun. And so in Biome for Kids, there's no humans, even the teachers, everybody's an animal.
I was almost tempted. I haven't had time to dig up the Raglanshire version of Michael Jackson's Thriller to show, but we haven't got it. But you know why? You told me.
I'm in it. I'm in there.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you're in Thriller. You're in Thriller. Yeah, nice one. Okay, next slide. What have we got here?
Okay, this is something that I found really interesting. This is, and it doesn't show up very well, but these are stages of cell division called mitosis. And Max has talked about doing that, but as far as I know, she has never actually put mitosis on there. But these are the stages of mitosis, and they were built by 8th graders in the virtual world. And they wanted to do that, and I didn't. I just let their teacher guide them, but they did all the building to show the stages of cell division. And some of the stuff they did was as good or better than what people who are, really professional builders in Second Life have done.
The elders probably just think they'll complicate it with extra detail. Yeah. I mean, we are referring, of course, here to the pale globes. The cellular structure is in those. It's not the background in any way. So
right.
As you can see, they are quite small there. Oh, wonderful stuff. Wonderful stuff. So moving ahead. Right. Now we've got a pretty... we've got a bit of all sorts in here, really, haven't we? Long shot.
Yeah, you can actually kind of skip that. That's just more on the alternative fuels. I just accidentally took 2 pictures of stuff.
Oh, right. Well, I haven't seen the cow before. Okay, here we go. Next one.
Okay, this is actually a classroom on Biome, which is not the kids' version. It's in a tree house. It was used with graduate students. My graduate students were in science education, and they absolutely loved using the virtual world, Second Life, and then Biome for their classroom. And because they were online classes and they're scattered all over the country, they could all get together here as avatars and share. And these are actually projects that they put up. And so we did all kinds of different courses in Biome on Second Life and then Biome here. And then with my biology courses that I taught in real life, face to face, we would also go into the virtual world and do stuff at Biome and stuff at Genome.
Great. I also recognize that slideshow. This is a wonderful thing Fleep 2 created many years ago, which you use and I use, indeed. Let's go to the next slide. Oh, that's of course the region we will be visiting in the week. Generic. Right, next slide. Oh yes, it's resing in a bit better now. Right.
This is from Genome. This is something that Max developed to show how proteins are built in the cell, and you actually ride the thing down the deal, and it explains how proteins are built. And that's just one of the activities that you can find in Genome, where we're going to tour.
Right. Okay, so I'll say it again. If you're not doing anything lunchtime on Wednesday, noon Pacific time, come and see it for real. Okay, here we are. Next slide. Oh, a nice looking house in the background there. Right, Mendel's garden path.
Yes, well, that house in the background is actually a mock-up of Mendel's monastery, where he did all his work. He was a monk, This is, and in front of it is some activities. Actually, one of my favorite activities is.
Actually, I'll interrupt there. I will interrupt there because I don't personally know who the hell Mendel is. Maybe you'd like to tell us who he or she is.
Gregor Mendel was is the person who really came up with the discovery that there's male and there's female, and they get together, and the offspring have characteristics of both. So. Basic genetics. He really is the father of basic genetics.
Wonderful. Okay, so great. That sort of contextualizes it for me, at least. Carry on. Yeah.
Anyway, the bulls, his first experiments were on pea plants, probably because he was also the gardener. And so he found that if you took yellow peas and yellow peas, you'd end up with some green peas. Anyway, so he was did all these experiments, had all this data, and really developed the whole idea of genes. And we know, we're all becoming more and more familiar with DNA and genes and everything, but it all goes back to Gregor Mendel. And this activity, you actually click on the bowls and make peas, and then you can determine what is going on with the peas. And it was real helpful for my students to visualize it, not just read it in a textbook.
My partner used to spend a lot of time over in Second Life breeding kitty cats. That's a different thing, but she had this huge database offline, and I guess it was all to do with patterns and mixing and the random things that would come up as well as the planned things. And what sounded like a simple little thing, I'll breed kitty cats in World, was really quite a complicated, almost studying a similar train of thought of genetics, really. Okay, moving on.
I want to interrupt about the kitty cats, because not those kitty cats, but there are cats. I don't know if you've ever heard, but calico cats are almost always female.
Oh.
And, 99% of the time. In fact, if they show up male, they're not completely male. They have two X's and a Y chromosome. But anyway, she has a display, Max does on Genome, that you can play with, where you click on Mama Cat and Daddy Cat and you make babies. And you can see why you have male cats can only be black or orange. They can't be a calico. And you can see why that is by playing with her cat.
Oh, fascinating. Great minds think alike.
So this
Okay.
This is some flowers that you can look at. You click on them and they change colors, and you can determine the percentages that certain genes show up in the population.
Great. It's fascinating stuff. Oh, and there's our sign for the kids region. Right. Okay. Well, I have no idea what this is. A little house and a few things around it.
Okay, this is actually the welcome island for Biome for Kids, and they land there. They can't get off of there without being part of the group, and I have to invite them to the group, or there's a few managers, or if there's a teacher who's bringing her classes in, and I have verified that she's a teacher, I will allow her to invite people to the group, but they can't get off that island. You can hypergrid into that island.
Right.
Which is the Biome for Kids island, but you can't get to any of the other islands from there. But that's the log cabin. When you hypergrid in, we had problems with people coming in with naked avatars. And so we just took out all the avatars, so you come in as a cloud or a puffball or whatever you want to call it. And so you have to get your avatar, and the avatars are on the second floor of the log cabin. And there's a little welcome area in there and information and so on. But that's the home island of Biome for Kids.
That's intriguing. That is what a server-side operation that just refuses to allow external avatars and forces you to, other than in cloud form, and then forces you to acquire a costume.
Yeah, if you create your avatar there. If you want to do a tour, and I open it up for tours periodically, and we could do a hypergrid tour there. That'd be fun, actually. So you could see all the stuff the kids do. But if we do a tour and I open it up for everybody, you're gonna jump in looking like you do. So you don't come in as a cloud.
Yeah. Oh. I was just interested in the actual mechanics of that. I remember, but even back in Second Life, you used to pop into role play sims, and they did everything they could to make you sort of pick up one of their freebie costumes and put it on, so that you were in role play. It was never a problem for me because my Second Life avatar is a lovely little mesh pussycat that fits in everywhere. But for other people, they would kind of be obliged to take their futuristic or high fashion kit off and go into a Roman toga or medieval kilt or whatever. And I've never actually come across an instance where server side your default avatar is kind of refused and you're forced to pick up a costume and wear it. So I was just quite intrigued by the mechanics of that.
Well, it's just for the people who, when you make you go online and you create a Biome for Kids avatar, and so you're logging in with your Biome for Kids avatar, it doesn't have anything in it. And
I know what you mean. Yeah.
And so we had to go into the code and remove the ability. It's not an inventory. There is no avatar in inventory that they can put on. So they just come in as a cloud, and they have to get their skin and their shape and their everything as one of the animals. They can't be a person.
Right. I know some viewers can be configured. I think Krista Lopez's onlook viewer will do this, where your avatar, your presence comes in, but no avatar comes in. So I think it's a combination of viewer and server. So if you're using the right viewer and the code's on the server, you actually enter as like a phantom and you see what's around you, but your own avatar doesn't render. I just love slipping my nose into technological possibilities there, I guess. Right, the next one's underwater, isn't it, by the look of it?
Yes, on hydrosphere, I talked about a little bit about Earth system science. On hydrosphere, there is a coral reef, and the kids came in and they love the coral reef, and it's got the sounds and the fish swimming around and a shark, which they like to ride on. But they wanted to do reports, so they uploaded their little PowerPoints. You click on them, it goes through. These were 5th graders, so 10 years old, so some of their spelling's not great and everything. But so they got to do that, and the picture, not the yellow, but the picture next to it is actually, they did their presentations Inworld, and the teacher, and she's going to be presenting with me, Elsie Acello. I made her an avatar that's an octopus because that's her favorite animal, and she's going to be the only blue-ringed octopus in Bound for Kids ever. I promised her that. But she's in the background there, but the kids are all sitting around a poster having a presentation, and of the that they had studied of some organisms that were under the sea.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. Certainly more pleasant in the underwater region. Most of you landed in here at the first. Right. Welcome to Chloe's building tutorial. Right. So this is the nitty-gritty stuff. This is the stuff that they didn't need, I guess. You told me that, you know.
The teachers do.
Very good.
But the kids,
there's a message in that story somewhere.
The kids just pick it up. In fact, one of my grandsons, when he was 4, he couldn't even type, so he couldn't chat, or anything. But he could do, twists. He could build all kinds of incredible things. He was probably going into engineering eventually. I'm saying that, he's not. But yeah, he could, it's intuitive for kids. I don't know, just, a lot of the kids. And I looked for a slide, I couldn't find one, but one of the very first things we did with kids was the teacher and I created an environment, an imaginary environment. And we told them what temperatures it was in the winter and in the summer and what the weather was like and all this stuff. And then they were learning about adaptations. So they had to create creatures that were adapted to that environment, and they were so amazing for little kids. These were like 9 and 10-year-olds. Some of them were 9. But one of them had fish that the babies were poisonous and the grown-ups weren't, so that things wouldn't eat the babies. And then there was a thing that could walk in the mud because it had super long legs. And they got it. They understood about adaptations. Yeah. And they were able to build these really fun looking creatures, with prims that demonstrated and then explained why those organisms were adapted for that imaginary environment.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. Evolution, fascinating topic in itself. Right. Adaptation. I think this may be our last slide, and it's rather an anonymous looking one. 2 phallic objects, one with a thing sticking out of it. Sorry.
Telescope, actually, and that's the backside of an introductory how to walk, how to fly, and all that stuff. Again, that's for the teachers and the college students. The little kids, they didn't want to sit still long enough to learn any of that. And they learned to ride on things that, like the shark, and, they didn't need any of that instruction. But there's, that's actually the one side of it. You go inside and you have to do all these things to learn how to navigate the virtual world.
I love this concept that the teachers need to be taught and the kids don't need their teachers. There's there's a story in that. There really is. Okay, it looks like that was the last slide there. Let me move over now to Nova. And Nova, if you want me to bring up any of those slides again while you're talking for any reason, let me know and we can pull them up again. But I'm going to do what I did with Chloe, and I'm going to go back to what you the biography you sent me in Skype, or rather. History of Nova archaeology is what you put at the top, and you say that you are with us, Nova, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Yes, I am.
Just checking in case I'm talking to thin air. You never know in a virtual world where the phantoms are, really. Right. You say the idea of virtual archaeology was started by Dr. Beverly Chiarulli, a retired associate professor and director of archaeological services at Indiana University of Pennsylvania. Since its creation in 2009 on the Second Life grid, the area has expanded with new features, landscapes representing archaeological and historical places that have been part of our real-world archaeological research. Archaeology is another area that fascinates me, actually. I love going to builds that have been made virtually, recreating things that we've long lost and things like that. I think it's a great thing of recreating the past. The virtual archaeology island has been the subject of articles, blogs, portions of which have been used for presentations over the years. You've even given me a whole list of links, which I can't do much about here, I'm afraid. We can't today get them on screen for anybody, but I'll pass over that. So about you, your real name, Ms. Marianne Schmelzer, MA. You're currently a practicing public archaeologist and president of the Indiana County Archaeology Society. Your passion is to educate and promote the aspects of applied archaeology in terms and visuals that can be utilized by both the classroom environments and indeed the general public. You presented your archaeological investigation renditions at PA, State Social and Science Teachers Conference and other organizations, shared a mutual interest in virtual education, worked with Leica 3D, Scan Station, examples of which can be seen in the recreations of the historic sites and structures found around the Allegheny and Portage areas. And we have a nice picture at the website, Welcome to the Society for Historical Archaeology. And when I clicked on the link, the nice picture wasn't there. Go figure. Anyway, that's the introduction you sort of gave me. And yeah, archaeology, yeah, right on. Give us a brief history, I guess. Start off with, other than what I've just read out, where you've been, how long you've been there, and how things have evolved and what you do now.
Okay, are you referring to real life or the virtual platform?
Well, obviously our main interest is the virtual platform, but we got, you are, how should we say, a professional practitioner, so I don't imagine it's impossible, you can totally divorce the two. So really the age of the online activities, really, yeah.
Okay, I started with IUP's grid on Second Life, and we were under the education category, so we got a discount. And then when Second Life pulled the rug out from under our feet,
yep,
we, as they love to do, Stephen had approached me and said, I would really like you to join us on a different grid. So with his help, he gathered up all my belongings on Second Life and we transferred them over to the science sim grid. And we regrouped with Chloe and Stephen and Max, as she had previously mentioned. And then we regrouped again to be on the Vibe grid. So we have been in existence, or Nova Archaeology has been in existence from 2009 to present. On my grid, you will find 5 regions. One is the main, where you will land. And if you come in as a cloud, I have avatars that you could load up. It has the underwater archaeology section, a historic section that was information was provided by the sociology department, the late Roman section, and those were provided by the history department. The Cyprus section, which was provided by the history department. Belize, which was provided by the, oh good lord, anthropology department, and the late woodland section that was provided by the anthropology department. So
they really brought all these departments, disciplines together. Yes.
Yes, everything is citable, which was very important. And of course, I had to make sure that I showed them what I was doing before I put it on there. Because, you know, IUP, like any other university, wants to be represented correctly. So
seal of approval, yeah. So.
Exactly. And then since I work with other government agencies, I had to do the same thing with them. The Army Corps of Engineers had provided some material. The Pennsylvania Historic Museum Commission had provided material. The Department of Transportation in Pennsylvania had also provided material. And as I mentioned before, they had to approve it prior to my opening it up to the public. So it's everything there is citable.
Great. So how have things progressed since this? We're still back in the science sim, aren't we? But you've moved on since then.
Yeah, we've moved to the Vibe Grid, and Chloe goes to my tours and I go to her tours, and we just kind of hang out with each other in real life. But thank God for Chloe and Stephen, because they keep us up and running, and whenever I want another region, they just give it to me and I could build happily away. I have 2 regions that were contributed material by the National Park Service, Allegheny Portage Railroad, and they approved everything that I put out there, and they are using it in real life at their visitor station. So I am really excited about that.
Now, do you personally do a lot of the actual building based on the reference material these departments and things are providing you, or are you really just organizing, I don't know, the resin construction of material that you sourced?
No. I do all the building.
Oh, wonderful.
So the Mayan temple, and it's a citable temple. I get very disturbed when I go to see other sites and they have a Mayan temple, but there's no information on it.
Or nothing in it, more to the point. You go through the door and it's a giant triangle or something.
Exactly. So in Belize, I do have a Mayan temple, but I follow it through with the information of the Mayan temple.
Mm.
And that was one of our field trips to Belize. And I made sure that I have pictures of the students that were on that field school project.
Now, in terms of the people you bring in, these are regular open grids, aren't they? They're not like the Biome for Kids, which is for younger children. What about, is it mostly students of archaeology and things that come, or do you find your You've got, you know, a more general interest approach to it. For example, I'm not an archaeologist, but I actually love going to archaeological builds. Go figure, you know, because there is something compelling, just to me, really, about that, you know, recreating what once was and one time would never have been considered to exist again, you know. So do you find a wide variety of interest in the, you know, the builds and the topic, or is it a fairly select, how should I say, academic group?
Surprisingly, I have found a mixture of people, and I'm not sure where they're coming from. The only time I see a large flow of people visiting the island is when I grid hop, and they're always curious to know why I was there, so they come over to my place.
I know for Safari that you know, I check for new people that are on it, and actually I more than the avatar names, I look at their name tag and actually notice the grid they're from, and I think, oh, I didn't know that I've been there, and I'll copy their grid name to my clipboard so that I can go visit, you know. You know, because sometimes just look at the avatar tag, you know, like you're wearing here. Our viewers can't see it, obviously, but, you know, it tells me, oh, you're from that grid. Have I ever been there? And, you know, that kind of thing. So I wonder if it's the same thing, you know, people have just seen you around and thought, oh, you come from somewhere interesting, you know.
Yes, periodically I view the visitor log, and when I see like 3 or 4 people had been there recently, I'll copy that information and I'll post it to Stephen. I should start posting it to Chloe's because she knows who's coming in from where. She can look at their accounts. I don't have access to that information, but she would be able to tell me exactly where they're coming from. Last week I had 2 from an education grid, so I'm curious to know. But basically my grid is open 24/7, and now that I've seen what Chloe's done on her regions, it gives me inspiration to expand. Chloe, I'm gonna need another region, so I just thought I'd throw that at you now.
And she was a 6x6 file region to boot. So
so then I'll have 6 regions, but the last region was with the National Park Service, as I said, and I'm still expanding on it because I'm still getting information that I could say is citable, and all the information there is so far citable, except Portage is kind of iffy, wishy-washy, but I did do a rendition of Portage as it would have been seen in the mid-1800s.
Right. I suppose the wonderful thing about archaeology is if you've got enough material, you really can't go wrong. You're not, you know, the purpose of archaeology is to look at the past, so you're not really worried if somebody comes along and flattens it and builds a skyscraper, as long as you got the archaeology up beforehand. That's wonderful. I'm going to have to come over there, and I did actually plan to visit both your regions really before the show, but since it was dependent on being brought online, it unfortunately didn't happen. But hopefully we'll see a lot on Wednesday.
I just want to add something really, really quick. Okay, I know you're trying to move on. I hope to be presenting at the next conference, the Virtual World's Best Practices in Education. I'm still waiting for the okay that they accepted my proposal. I did do that presentation in real life at the Pennsylvania Education Council. And the concept of virtual world archaeology is still being regurgitated, and I don't know, it's always very iffy. They know I exist, and they know I'm going to keep pushing their door until they finally accept me. But I'm very much accepted in the virtual world platform, and I don't understand why there's such a stigma in real life prior or in contrast to the virtual world. I wish they would get out of their tunnel vision and understand that there is a significance in virtual archaeology, because right now our present funding in real life is falling to the wayside. There are a lot of real life archaeologists that are trying to remarket themselves because their careers are being swept away. So they need to embrace this concept, because the past should not be swept away. And I'm here to make a stand for all archaeologists, historians, sociologists, and scientists.
Oh, absolutely. Occasionally on this show we've had extended because it's always different depending on our guests, and we've gone casually into the areas of VR hardware and trends in that regard, and I often come up with an example. I don't want to go out wearing a clunky helmet all over me. I just want to sort of, I imagine an idea when I can just plug a pair of glasses into a socket on my iPhone, which does all the work, and the glasses can be opaque, or they can be semi-opaque, or they can be fully transparent, and this is what AR is all about. This week actually Intel demonstrated their new glasses, and they really look like my reading glasses, and they have an overlay inside them which doesn't amount to much apparently at the moment, but it's the Google Glass thing of giving you data layer. And I've always thought, coming back to archaeology, it's just an example I cite that I might wander off out of London town here where I live out into the countryside and visit a national trust. It could be anything from an obvious place like Stonehenge or an obscure Roman village. And the idea that I could, be in real life going to this place, and there's probably some signs up with some illustrations telling me what was there, and so that I can try and visualize it, and then I can walk up to the old stones and try and that stone was a cooking stone in something that looked like this that we can no longer tell, and the idea that I could be wearing things like smart glasses that it enabled to me see superimposed on the real world, so to speak, a virtual construct, and then maybe switch to full virtual, where I can actually walk around the virtual construct regardless of my position at the ruins in real life or whatever. And I've always thought that's a compelling example of the way all these will blend together. And an adventure in the real world that becomes dependent on the augmented layer to understand this, and then jumping even further into a complete virtual world that is a recreation of what you're trying to understand. And you could even have different different branches of the virtual world, where one becomes participatory, where you are a character in an old simulation, so you learn about the life and social structure as a role player almost in it, or you could have another strand which is simply an observer researcher kind of strand, and all these sort of things I see coming together. So I would even if you can't convince a real life archaeologist to think out the box, there are so many things like just the basic augmented reality stuff that's coming along that is forever going to change the public and I guess educational receipt of their expertise. So if you don't think outside the box, or certainly take these things into account, you're really sort of anchoring yourself in the past. That maybe it won't be surprising if there's no work for these people, because they're kind of dinosaurs by not taking the opportunities to actually enhance what they're doing already. So, and I don't know. I mean, the archaeology thing just seems to fall so neatly into being a perfect example of that, layers of interaction moving from, the real world ruin, as it were, right through to the highly detailed recreation, whether it's observable or participatable. And I don't know. When you gave me the impression just now that you meet people in the field who are principally anchored in real world archaeology, who are just blind to the new opportunities open to them.
Exactly. And it's very, very sad because there is so much potential. There are so many different audiences that you could reach. And I've been able to network with a lot of people through my archaeology region. And it's interesting because way back in 2010, I think, IUP, Indiana University of Pennsylvania, had sent me to Berkeley out in California, and I had never been out west. So I was very, very scared. It was my first presentation, and I brought up Archaeology Island. And they were fascinated. They were absolutely fascinated with everything. And they said, you know what, we'll know what to do with you because you are so outside of the box. And I says, well, I plan on being here for a long time, so you're welcome to join my box. And what I try to tell everyone is I want to work with other colleagues. I got a colleague archaeologist from Italy who has a region in Second Life, and now I have a small exhibit on his region of archaeology. So I am expanding in both Second Life and on the Vibe Grid, but I desperately need other colleagues because I don't want to just represent Pennsylvania, but right now that's all I have. So anyone out there in the audience that can hear this stream, please come on and join me, please.
And nobody, even the most insular of artists and things can't really work alone. You have influences and things. And the wonderful thing about virtual worlds is that collaborative thing. If half a dozen of colleagues from wherever can bring different elements in, then, you're enhancing, you're participating as a team, to build this exhibit, for want of a simpler word. Which will contain more as a whole than what any individual can do. And, sometimes two people are working on something and they discover something new by putting their two things together. It's, there's, in a way, there's nothing more sad than, feeling you're isolated. I think it was Jim Morrison. My memory fades these days, but there was, I think there was a line in one of the old Doors songs about, come join us now out here on the perimeter. And, you just said it there where you're outside the box already and you say, right, come and join me. I'm here for the long haul, so to speak. I'll be waiting for you there on the perimeter. So, I think, anybody out there, especially archaeologists, you can wake up and think, well, this is something you can do at home on your computer. You don't actually have to travel for a few hundred miles to dig up the earth, whatever. There are a whole lot of aspects of what you're doing that, can complement what you're doing already, so to speak. Let me move to, James, have you got any questions, by the way, at this point? I mean, it's,
no, I'm doing good.
You're doing good. It's just absolutely fascinating listening, isn't it?
Well, yeah. And I, of course, the discussion of the virtual reality headsets is, always of interest to me. And so I think archaeology, I think you're right, could just be a perfect use for that type of technology.
Yeah. I mean, I follow so much of this stuff, and I suppose I think it just comes naturally. I will pinpoint a particular area of interest and think, oh God, that is just such a perfect example of what the possibilities are, even though there may be endless possibilities for endless areas of interest. One will just strike me like archaeology is, every aspect of it almost is just made for virtual worlds. Yeah.
Well, I think
I
it's
think
also the combination of augmented reality and immersive virtual environments. It's the perfect use case, because what's the use case? You're in the physical world, you're looking at some ruins, and you're like, what did this look like back then? And if you could have an augmented reality experience where you're seeing the ruins, but then you're seeing overlaid over it, the full building, and then switching into full immersive VR where you can actually walk through it and and interact with NPCs and things like that in the environment. I think it's the perfect use case for that combo AR plus VR / immersive virtual world.
I have a section in Al-Taha. Now, Al-Taha was a presentation done by one of the students in the anthropology department, and I don't want to name drop because I didn't get permission. But I have an actual field school representation of the Johnson site. And what I did was I made a CAD of the site itself, and then around the CAD on the units, I have the actual pictures of what students were digging that unit, were excavating that unit. And then I have a real life slideshow of the field schools that took place over 3 years, along with a very huge texture map that shows all the archaeological units throughout the whole area. And it's great because when they see that, they go, oh my God, I remember that. So that always gives me a good feeling when other students from IUP and the anthropology department can see that I'm really utilizing their information as well, and they love seeing their pictures. Of course, everyone likes seeing a picture of themselves.
Nova, I have a question for you. I'm thinking of the recent story about the discovery of many more. Was it Mayan communities because of satellite analysis or something from the air? And have any of your students or any of your participants found any value in having the ability to fly in a virtual world and go to a great height over a site or a village type thing?
Okay, let me explain the new hype, all right? As I said, our current administration has given us a whole new set of guidelines that we have to follow as professional archaeologists. Now they don't want us to ground truth. By ground truthing, I'm trying to explain it in layman's terms.
Yeah.
We are allowed to do STPs, which are shovel test pits, but we cannot do a phase 3 operation that includes an investigation of the entire site. They don't want us disturbing the soil. Now, I don't know how you could do that. So now we have to run a ground penetrating radar and say, okay, we're finding abnormalities here. And then they just take our initial background report with our GPR readings and they go, okay, next. Now, in my eyes and in my colleagues' eyes, we're saying, no, we want to know what that abnormality is. But our current administration is saying, no, we just want you to say what might be there and we'll classify it as historic, non-historic, or whatever. You know, that's, and all that information gets gray archived. So the general public has absolutely no idea.
Well, yeah, actually, I'm just trying to think of the logic of that. You know, I'm as keen as anybody to protect the planet and the earth and probably the soil, I suppose. But I mean, you know, if you don't dig up where there is something, how do you reveal what was there? I mean, you can't just put a sign up saying, you know, this is the site where underneath here there is probably something of historical value. You know, people want to know what it is, not the, you know, it's probably historical.
Shown the other day where they used the lasers from the air to prove some stuff, but it was all Mayan, and it was funded outside the country. I'm thinking it was Guatemala, and the head scientist was Guatemalan. So they were able to do that and then ground proof and go in and actually look for the pyramid that they saw using the lasers. And I think, you know, other places are much more open to that than we are right now.
So
Exactly.
you're really talking about the American administration here stopping you doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
These are the new rules and regulations that we have to follow. As far as the aerial photography, I am all for technology. I really am. I love the idea when I got to use the Leica 3D scanner from Beverly Cerulli. She just slapped me right on that piece of machinery. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. And they, the support team from Leica said, well, you have 630 pages of text files that you can read through. Well, I am not an avid reader. I will not go through all that just to find out what button to push. Yeah. So I jumped in at cold turkey. I learned cold turkey, and I was able to do my my thesis based on the limited knowledge that I had. But it turned out awesome, and I like I said, I'm all for the technology, but our present administration wants just the technology use and not ground proofing. We are not allowed to dig anything at this point unless we have a really, really good reason.
Maybe they're scared of what you might unearth. It goes contrary to creationism or something. I mean, I don't know. It just sounds...
It's the aliens. It sounds... They don't want us to know about the aliens.
Yeah, they don't want you digging up the Nevada desert and finding, what is that area, something or other with strange aliens. Well, then you won't be an archaeologist. You'll be a extraterrestrial investigator.
That's what's really neat in my field. As a practicing public archaeologist, I am the liaison between the private sectors and the public sectors. So I take great pride in telling the general public exactly what's going on. Yeah. And I get information from them as well, because I don't look like I'm a threat. Now, my colleagues are all very, very professional people, but we tend to not want to share our knowledge with the general public because there are looters, and we're protecting our sites against looters. So when I talk to them, I am a non-threatening person, okay? They feel free to talk to me. The public talks to me, and I give them a very general idea, and I explain to them why we do what we do. And they definitely appreciate it because it's something that they haven't heard before. They've always heard, no, it's none of your business, you can't have it, da.
Yeah. That's an interesting take on that. I mean, for a second, when you said looting, I was thinking, they're worried about their intellectual copyright on their academic papers. But in fact, you're going beyond that, aren't you? They're worried that if a location is known in the real world, that maybe, like as a treasure chest buried underneath it, or like the gold rush, then people would go in physically and meddle with the land.
Exactly.
to take stuff. So that I suppose is a cautionary approach, that may have some wisdom to it. But even
Right.
so, it's yeah, that's difficult. But I mean, I don't know. You probably just have to weigh up the what do they call it? The risk assessment. If the risk is,
And
you probably don't want to advertise an unexplored, unprotected site because of that. But
right.
that should actually stop within a certain level of communication. You don't have to publish all the papers on the web. You can do it through private channels and things. And the risk factor is very, very low, I would have thought.
Exactly. And as for the Johnson site, that's on Army Corps of Engineer land. So that site is protected anyway, but I made sure not to include any pictures that gave the actual site location. And of course, you would have to know how to discriminate what the location is by the coding that we use when we're taking pictures of the site. It has special coding that we understand. The general public doesn't understand, but still, to protect the site, I never include the unit number.
Well, and coming down to the end game here, which is virtual archaeology, the recreation of the lost. If I could recreate, a real life rediscovered, Mayan pyramid or something, as you say, the virtual recreation does not have to include a recreation of all the surrounding area that would identify where it really is. Virtually you can say, this is a rebuilding of a location somewhere in South America and, in the country or whatever. But you don't really need to get, for people to enjoy the rediscovered, restored location virtually, you don't have to at all give anything like that away. Although chances are, if it has, a site that has been dug up is presumably protected and known anyway. But I'm thinking of that satellite example where something is there. And in the country you mentioned, I think it was you, Chloe, the local government was fine with then pursuing further. But, say something is underground and you can recreate it virtually, you have just about enough information to do at least a primitive build, then what you do virtually does not need to give any real world location to go with it. I mean, I suppose, somebody visiting it is taking on trust that it really does exist because you can't tell them where. But, in terms of the discipline, you've already, it's not like going to a real place and that lovely example of AR to VR. You can't do that because you don't want to betray the real place. But the exercise in virtually recreating something could be independent of that totally. Well, it's puzzling.
I'm going to have to intervene on that comment. The Johnson site is a protected site. That was an actual archaeological project that was taking place. The recreation of Allegheny Portage Railroad and the Portage area, they are open to the public in real life. So those, I am promoting tourism through my virtual platform to promote those sites that are able to be of real life access.
Sure.
So that helps them immensely.
Yeah, it swings and roundabouts. It's the idea of it only being online as a recreation is one extreme, and the full whack of the AR to VR thing is the other. I love the AR to VR thing simply also because for somebody to whom that is a new experience too, it is like a slow glide from reality through to augmentation through to full immersion. You're not throwing them in straight from one to the other, so it's something that from the learning perspective, is adaptable. You may choose to look at all the AR stuff but never go into the full virtual environment, or you may choose, if you're used to virtual environments, you may take the jump straight and think, oh, I don't need the AR stuff, I'll get it in the virtual. So there are different degrees in the way, not just with archaeology but anything else really can be employed. Don't know. Let me. I'm running out of ideas here.
Let me apologize for not having any slides, because I had absolutely no idea on preparing for this show. So, excuse me, folks. I am very, very sorry.
We'll do it another time. We'll have you back as a slideshow commentator, and you can bring your slides.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, we'll extend the conversation at some later point. Let's move to Pathfinder now, because we barely heard from you. I mean, there must be a number of questions or thoughts you have on what we've been talking about, but also, what's happening with you?
No, I've just been thinking of that intersection between immersive virtual worlds, both in front of your computer on a screen and wearing goggles, as well as augmented reality, and just how I think the use case for archaeology is really strong. And because, I mean, what you're doing with archaeology is building a whole from fragments that you find physically around you. And these fragments are, in terms of, with construction, with buildings, they're things like foundations, the stuff that lasts, but, there's so much that doesn't last, and you can infer from what is physically there. And I remember seeing a picture of some ruin, like it was like a ruined castle or something. I can't remember exactly, but in the physical world, somebody had basically just put up a piece of plexiglass, and if you stood at the right angle and looked through the plexiglass, etched into the plexiglass was what the castle looked like when it was completely intact. So it was like augmented reality with no computer technology. You know what I mean? Like you just stood and you looked at it and you're like, oh, there's the roof and there's this thing, and it would overlay. Do you see, I'm not hoping I'm describing it right, but do you see do you understand what I mean? It would overlay with the castle behind it.
Conversely, I'm not getting off topic here, but I watched a movie, DVD late last night. It's a newish movie called Their Finest, and it's about the propaganda films being made in World War II. And there was one shot, the story involved the actors and the crew, and this multiplex story is very good, but there was just one scene, right, which was meant to be showing the actors on the cardboard sets, and it looked like a special effect from the modern day, because they were actually on a hillside overlooking the evacuation of Dunkirk. That was how grand the vista was. And one of the actors, who doesn't realize they're live, comes running up to the scriptwriter to query something. It's a bit of a comedy as well, and in doing so, he intrudes on the special effect, and you realize that they did that special effect simply by putting a pane of glass in front of the camera, painting a few little things on it. It made it look like this. You see, there was no CGI or anything involved, but the end result was almost the same.
I mean, that's a classic film technique that prior to computer, augmented backgrounds and using the matte paintings on glass, basically overlaid. But I mean, I just think that that's again, so AR is just takes that to the next level. And then the other thing I was thinking of, just with full immersive virtual worlds, of course the special thing about like a place like this ruined castle isn't just the architecture of it, it's what happened in it. What were the things that went on in it? What were the types of people who were in it? What did they wear when they were in it? What did they talk about? What did they do? What were the rituals that happened in these spaces? And so, I think the power for, being able to then you know, like with like the Mayans, right? To go into some temple and not just see the way it looked in a fully immersive virtual environment, you know, but also to experience the things that happened in it. You know, so I can maybe here's a religious ceremony, a Mayan religious ceremony, you know, and maybe see people, NPCs walking around wearing what they used to wear, you know, historically accurate situations.
I remember many years ago, and this was in Second Life. It was that many years ago, actually. You know, I'm not particularly keen on role play as a rule. I actually used to have a little tree house on a medieval island, and you know, I was the wizard from the future, so I got away with wearing all my modern kit. But that aside, you know, I didn't really often visit roleplay places that much because you know, they're games within Second Life, and that is fine. But then I actually went to a build of I don't know whether it was Rome or another city, but it was an ancient build. You know, it's a recreation, lovingly done, of let's say it was ancient Rome. It was something very akin to that, anyway, and it was both a role play experience and an educational experience because it was all grounded in known fact as best they could with the recreation and stuff like that. But it was a sim, a region that had a load of residents, not NPCs as we probably do here in you know, these days. But it was just lots of residents, and all the residents were assigned roles. You know, so there would be somebody cleaning the laboratories or whatever they had. Equally, there would be somebody who was like a senator in ancient Rome. And as you moved around in the build, you were literally surrounded by actors. You know, they were role players, but to you, they could have been actors because they were really keeping to the role play. And it was designed to demonstrate to you the nuances, as it were, of life in that recreated environment. And, you know, I said, well, suddenly, you know, this was a pivotal moment, I think, for me, to be honest, because I suddenly thought, hang on, there's a bit more to the possibilities of role play here than I think of when I think of role play.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, this actually does serve a very useful function, like a historical movie might. You know, every aspect is taken care of to, you know, recreate something. And as you say, if you can do an archaeological build and then actually fill it with maybe NPCs or maybe just actors, avatar actors, who constantly keep that world alive for.
Yeah.
Not only the participant, but the observer, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, and I think I mean that's also one thing where OpenSim excels is with the ability to create scripted NPCs. You know, beyond way beyond what Second Life can do, because it's all. It's one of those things that OpenSim's not trying to copy from Second Life. It's trying to do something that Second Life never could, which is, you know, the whole scripted NPC functionality built in to the system. So there's just tons of really great possibility there.
Well, Pathfinder, I'm going to be depending on you to help me with the NPC aspect, because every time I try it, I fail miserably. So I will be brain tapping you for that. And Mel, I certainly do look forward to being back here. Again, my apologies for not being prepared, but I will be prepared on the next showing.
I'll tell you if you want to check out people who really understand what's going on with NPCs in OpenSim, go to Nara's Nook, the virtual writers colony.
No, Malone, she knows. And also Ferd Fredericks, who runs Outworld. Is
exactly, yeah. So Ferd Frederick basically wrote all of the. He's written so much fantastic code and tools for people using NPCs, and then the folks at Nara's Nook took it to the next level and have been creating not just really cool NPCs, but also educational materials and additional tools based on, you know, expanding on Ferd's work. So anything that I know, I learned from those folks.
Yeah, we actually have some of that in Vibe, but it's not running right now because our builder, Rachel, who is a physician, built World Traveler, which is not running right now, but it was to teach medical personnel how to travel to Eastern Africa and places in Africa where the sanitation is poor, where there's lots of diseases. And as you would walk through the path, you would talk to a virtual chief or a person who would offer you water or different things. And so that was quite primitive compared to what they're doing today. But that grid has been turned off. I just turned it off for 2 years now because Rachel has a new job up in the Northwest somewhere and isn't able to operate it. But we should try to get it up for a tour sometime.
Yeah, cool.
NPCs are really fascinating because if, for example, one of you two or anybody here wanted an NPC of yourself, I can actually just take you to the back of the stage here when we're off air and make you one. That process itself is not very difficult, and you've got a copy of yourself in whatever costume you're wearing at the time you make it. But what I find really fascinating, well, we'll do it after. What I find really fascinating, which is where I come unstuck, is what can just be done with scripting now. I know a safari some weeks ago, and I hate to say, me and my memory, I can't remember the name of the place, but we actually went to, it was like a sort of semi-combat region. I think you were zapping the undead or something like that. But two things struck me. One is that it was very low lag. Yet almost everything in this region was a scripted NPC that behaved, and if you managed to shoot it, it did different things, so it was scripted. Not, there wasn't only a script engine for going around and zapping them. There was another script engine as to how they behave when they got hit, Did they die or did they just get even angrier or something? So it was almost the scripting of the NPC almost caused it to take on a real personality rather than just be, an actor avatar. And at the HIE conference, the beta one we did in December, there was a chap who came along there who demonstrated a system where you actually made scripts with note cards. And in fact, he had every single script in a large region running from a single script that would address that did what it did based on a note card at a particular point. So instead of having a region with script for this and a script for that all over the place, or running and using resources, he just had like a single script. And the note cards provided the plugins to do different things at different points. And of course, the simulator was only running a single script. So start combining that with NPCs and, I'm no technician, but, the people that can do this, the scripting sort of stuff, technically, the world's wide open, to possibilities there, just by putting those two things together.
Chloe, I second the idea that you open up that region because it is fascinating. It is educational. It is wonderfully done. So yes, by all means, you really need to open that up.
I think what we need to do is open some of those areas up, like that one where it's not in genome as well, on a schedule. So so it's not open all the time, which tends to lag the areas that are being used more. But we open it, say, every Mondays and Wednesdays or something like that, which would be easy to do.
Good idea. Really good idea. But the public needs to see that as well, because as I said, it is well done.
I'm sorry, folks. I think I lost my voice there for a minute. I don't mean my actual voice. I mean the connection. Am I heard?
Yes.
I hear
I
you.
can hear you, Mel.
Mhm.
Yep.
Oh, okay, fair enough. I don't know why. I sort of stopped talking somebody, and then I sort of heard a voice come in that I think was talking about something else. So maybe I muted for a while. Okay. Well, I think we can start wrapping up for this week anyway. What I always like to do at the end of the show is like go around everybody and ask, kind of what else is happening. It doesn't even need to be virtual, but virtual is fun. Anything else exciting you recently or coming up, or anything else you're engaged in that would be of interest. I'm actually going to start with you, Pathfinder, because we haven't actually heard much about what you're up to, although it's not that long since you've been here anyway. So,
well, I think just the one thing that I'm particularly interested in these days is all the people setting up servers on using Discord for communities. It's a really interesting platform. I mean, that started out as a platform for gamers to chat, but it's like the new Slack. Everyone used to be so into Slack, and now I think it's very warranted and a really cool little app that you can run on your phone as well. And I'm having a great time discovering all kinds of Discord communities.
It's really funny, actually. I love Discord. I mean, I actually started. You actually joined it, I think, didn't you, the other day?
Mm-hmm.
MetaWorld actually had one, but I tend to use it with Tara and James here and other folks for, a bit like Slack, an internal, team group kind of thing. But we did, James will testify to this, we've done a few things where you can actually get, our broadcasting is done, we use an open source program called Open Broadcaster, and there is actually a Discord plugin for it. Now, it's not obvious how it works, but it allows you to take any component out of Discord, like an individual chat stream or something, and you can get a web link for that actual isolated bit of Discord, if you see what I mean.
Oh, neat.
So earlier today, for example, we haven't been able to use it because we've set up new kit and Discord isn't integrated yet. But I posted the links for today's show that Chloe had given me into Discord. It's just a few lines of chat. And technically, we can take that singular entry, get a web link for that, and then we can put it on our broadcast screen through Open Broadcaster as an overlay, like a lower third. So as we're talking, on that we can actually scroll down those links to the one we're talking about, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
And it's basically the only thing that actually is at play is that Discord is giving you I think it's called a webhook for that particular bit of a conversation. And it's able to display that as an isolated web window, but inside Open Broadcaster as opposed to a normal web page. And
nice.
and then you can make it transparent, semi-transparent, so it blends in with your screen.
Yeah.
I'm sort of using it for that kind of thing. But basically, Hamlet Orr at New World Notes started his own sort of chats there a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And Adam Frisbee at ScienceBase, he's actually more active in New World Notes than he is in his own. But they've started. Adam was doing it for a while early on, but they were doing this long, complex Skype chat. And I had to unsubscribe because I've got better things to do than endless pop-up windows amongst devs at ScienceBase. But using Discord, it's much more natural. And something else I've discovered that I guess it's in beta at the moment. If you use Windows, cough. That was a real cough too. Sorry. If you use Windows, there's a kind of well, it's fairly robust. I guess it is in beta, but you wouldn't know it. Called Station. And I've started using that because it's got a lot of vertical tabs that are really just icons. And you can integrate things like Slack and Discord and your Google Calendar and your Dropbox and all sorts of things into this one interface. So, the icons on the left kind of light up if there's an incoming message in Slack or in Discord, and you can easily see where the activity in different apps is, and then just click on the tab that contains the kind of iframe for that app. And it's Slack and Discord are very underrated, I think, ways of communicating.
Well, it's interesting because, thinking from a community developer perspective, you always have, with the tools, you always have to hope for the best but plan for the worst. And by that I mean, how do you deal with abuse of your system and people spoofing other identity, and basically people trying to screw around, right? So the tools don't make the community, but the tools are critical to helping cultivate the community, right? So it's really interesting how Slack is designed to be used by people who really trust each other. So the problem with Slack is like you can actually do some serious screwing around with Slack. And so it's actually not a really good tool for having a large community, because you're always going to have bad actors, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the same goes for some other tool, like even Telegram doesn't work that well. But the thing I love about Discord is that it was forged in fire in terms of griefers, because it was designed for gamers. It was designed for the gaming community from the ground up. It's designed for gamers, so they had to get their shit together to prevent people from abusing it from the very beginning. So it's like I'm playing around with the admin tools, and I'm like, these are really powerful tools. This is really great. No one can really. I'm thinking, oh, of course, because this was forged in fire. This was they rolled it out for gamers, so they had to have their tools, all their ducks in a row. So it's wonderful for opening up a wider community of people. I love it. It's hilarious.
It is, yeah. I hardly ever, I get the links from New World Notes and stuff, but because it's so largely Second Life biased, I don't pay much attention to Hamlet's stuff. But since he's opened up that, I got, it's not being flooded at the moment. He's got, more and more people every day. And some stuff, Second Life fashion, I'm not remotely interested in. But the channels are well organized, and
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of groups going online. I mean, and I think I read Boing, which is it started out as a newsletter, and now it's kind of a news site for geeks, and they have a Discord group too. So it's like everyone's rolling out Discord communities, and I just think it's wonderful to see this thing flourishing, because I think a lot of people were trying to use Slack for that, and it just wasn't working out. I mean, it's good for small teams of people who trust each other, or enterprise stuff rolled out internally where you have to, because the thing is you got to pay, right, to have the full searchable history once you get beyond a certain number of posts and users and all that. But with Discord, it's much more scalable and affordable for people who don't really have much money, and again, it's forged in fire, so it's got really good administrative tools to prevent griefers.
Yeah, I had with Slack, apart from the MetaWorld group there were a few other Slack channels I found at first, and you could join up with them, and so I had this, I can't remember which was which, but on one client, I would be able to swap groups quite easily and check up on all the groups I was following, but then I'd open another client on the iPad or something, and I couldn't find any way of swapping groups. So it was never a compact interface that was very reliable, whereas Discord, I can just move from Hamlet's channel to Adam's channel, and the very first channel I actually subscribed to in Discord is no longer going, and that was the people at VR Chat had one, and for some reason they haven't posted for years, probably early last year, so presumably they just prefer using VR Chat. But they come and go. But yes, you are right. It's a very good medium, as you say, for a greater crowd of people. It certainly beats. The other thing is, if not for a huge crowd, but potentially it's probably better for, it's always had voice built in.
Yeah.
And although I found that this ended up going back to Skype because I found its voice deteriorated a bit. It's probably a good alternative for group chats. I mean, at one point, James and I were wondering whether to use Discord instead of Skype for this very show. The only problem being is that it's not like Skype. It's not ubiquitous.
Yeah.
You dig up a guest from nowhere, and sometimes people say, "Oh, I don't use Skype," and they have to get on Skype especially to join us. The thought, but people who have Skype, they switch it on. Oh, I'm not going to download another program.
Well, the thing is now Skype's built into Windows.
Yeah,
it's part of Windows 10, so
it's even more ubiquitous.
Since Microsoft bought it, so.
Yeah. And the Windows 10 version doesn't work, but that's beside the point. It is that people that I'm going to make a Skype call. There is a phrase. It's like I'm making an internet telephone call. Whereas if I said I'm going to bring you on Discord, they'd go, "What? Where? How? When?"
True. Well, this is the early days. I think it's
sure.
We're part of the early pioneers. Jumping into all the Discord groups. But
I certainly think that the world desperately needs an alternative to Skype.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yes. And Mel and I were just discussing it prior to airing the show. I am on the classic version of Skype, and I just realized that my Skype is now all Italian. I didn't make any changes, but I've got an Italian menu, and thank God I know Italian, so I still know how to maneuver in Skype. But
actually,
I'll tell you, it's odd.
If you get that, is very odd. That's probably like disappearing data under Windows updates. I reckon if you go into, I think it's in Tools, you choose the language, but there's always a flag. A little thumbnail flag by the language, so you just look for your flag and toggle it back, and it turns back to your language.
No, I haven't deciphered it yet, but I'm getting there.
It did have its uses the other night, though, didn't it, Nova? I was able to share your screen for a few hours.
Oh my God, yes, that was extremely helpful. Yeah. Thank you, by the way.
Yeah, hope all that cleared itself up. You didn't get any more.
No, I'm still getting system freezes, but it was fun to toy around with it.
Okay. Well, fingers crossed. But yeah, it does have its uses too. Yeah. Right. Anything else, Pathfinder, on your mind, or how's the what we call level designing going these days, to use the game terminology?
Yeah, it's going well. I mean, I'm spending probably more time in OpenSim now than Unity, but also waiting to see what's going to happen with VR. It's just really interesting to see how it's kind of like the reality of the situation. I think is hitting a lot of folks where it's like, people aren't going to put these things on their heads, and they're too expensive, and there's no killer game for it yet, even. And the markets are going. They're not selling enough of the hardware, and I'm wondering if Magic Leap's going to come around with and change things with their augmented reality. With their hardware.
I know James here is keen on not the HoloLens, but the Microsoft mixed reality thing. I'll get him to mention it in a minute. But there's we were doing the news earlier, for example, and there was a new headset and sort of slightly more complex technology involved. But it was clear from the press release they weren't targeting consumers; they were targeting the enterprise. And I have a feeling it's in science and enterprise forms that you're not going to shop in a headset to buy your groceries.
No.
But, if a surgeon can wear a headset and see more detail of your innards than he can with the naked eye, then it might be used in hospitals for operations. So if the technology advances that much, I think there's a big future in it. But whether until it's a pair of glasses that people can easily put on a train or something like that, I don't think, once the gamers have been satisfied, which I suspect most of them have, who can afford it, then I've got a feeling the consumer market for space helmets is running out fast. That's my feeling. Yeah, and like you, I've kind of abandoned Unity. I think at one point in my life I just spent all my day in it, learning it. But at this point, it's better other people do that. It's so much easier to do things here.
Yeah.
Very, very. You can do complex things in a very non-complex way, as I'm sure everybody here agrees. You start with your prims and your lights and stuff, and it's not high fidelity in the other, not the platform, but the conceptually, but it's something. James, how are you getting on with the mixed reality headset, isn't it? Because you have been having great fun with that, and the Olympics in 3D.
Yeah. I watched the opening ceremonies with the Windows mixed reality helmet, and it was, there were some problems. The way that this was sponsored and produced by Intel, some of the choices they made were not really satisfactory. It wasn't a full 360 video, but a 180 video. But it was still very compelling. And the fun thing about the way that they did it was kind of a promise of cable television many years ago. You have a menu where you can choose your camera position.
Yeah.
You can move throughout the stadium or move throughout the track or wherever the competition is. And I loved it during the open ceremony as the different nations walked out. They had a camera right down where the teams would come out and start waving at the crowd, and it was like being there. It was
a bit like our camera HUD, as it were, where you can switch angles and depths and stuff, and just choose what angle you want to be.
Yep.
In your case, filming, but in this case, watching.
Yeah, and
could you actually zoom in at all to a given
no.
shot? It was just panorama and choices.
It was, and it was really. I mean, it's the whole thing we've discussed before with Maria about the conflation of VR 360-degree videos. There's still quite a big amount of confusion about it not really being VR. It was I enjoyed it immensely, and it was the interesting thing about these sending images like this. It's a different sort of I'm not sure I like the word, but a privileged position. So, for example, it could be on the ice or on the ground of the auditorium, but then be up with the the presidents and dignitaries, and
sure,
it was an interesting experience.
Yeah, getting it from multiple perspectives.
Yeah.
I mean, me and Maria used to have this thing. I would talk about something as the latest 360 video, and she would say she would insist it was VR.
Right.
I know it's VR. I know it's 360 video, but I was looking at it actually principally from the point of sound, just to go, looking at it, thinking about it really. And actually the most natural thing going back to the days of Cinerama films and things like that, is the likelihood of 360 a viewpoint being needed is like a surround sound soundstage. It's actually minimal, so long as you've got everything locked in one hemisphere. And you've got the sound stage or the visual thing in a hemisphere, that allows your eyes to move left and right, forward, back, or whatever. It's only if you're standing up with a headset on in the middle of a room that you're actually really ever going to want to turn around 360 degrees. If you go to a futuristic arcade that's built for VR, you're presumably wired up, you're in a bodysuit, you've got every attachment possible, and they give you a big space to, go around shooting things in, and hopefully the space is big enough that you don't bump into walls, etc., etc. But that's like the out-of-home experience. So I can see consumers latching on to that. If they pass an arcade like that and think, "Oh, let's spend an hour in that thing," But I can't sit in the living room really. After the gamers have all got it, and just immerse themselves further in what they're already immersed in. It's I don't think it's a selling point for virtual worlds, or even for a lot of games. It's just the technology itself, I think, is going to be huge, but it's not going to be possibly the thing that we spent a couple of years considering, which is everybody's going to sit in a helmet at home.
Mm-hmm. Very much the early days. Yep.
Yeah, pretty wonderful stuff. Chloe Nova, do you have any experience with the hardware side of things? Somehow, I don't think either of you. Yeah, I've got a feeling neither of you probably are headset owners. But have you ever tried the Google Cardboards and things to put mobiles in? Have you ever?
Oh, heck no. Heck no. Nor do I plan on purchasing one.
Well, they're so cheap. I do actually have one. 7 minutes, and it's been gathering dust ever since. But I have to admit, because all the phones you put in them kept roasting hot. They can't cope. You don't want to damage the phone, but it's a teaser to what it's all about for people. They do sort of work, especially for the 360 video kind of thing. But I even pass on that, But, coming back to the archaeology, I don't want to go unfold some foldable Oculus and take it to the archaeological side just to get the AR, But the moment Intel come out with these glasses that look like animal reading glasses, what the hell? They're in my pocket. I unfold them and put them on like glasses, or they're hopefully a bit more of a visor effect. And I plug it into my iPhone or something when I need it. And so, I'll go to Stonehenge, I'll plug in, I'll get out my iPhone, I'll plug in, put the glasses on and plug them in, and go through that experience we were talking earlier about, moving from reality to AR to VR, etc. And one day I think that will take off. But, I can't see you want to keep those same semi-opaque glasses on 24 hours a day walking down the street. Unless you were really on a shopping spree and wanted an advert for everything you passed. Yes. Okay, forget.
Oh, quick last thing I got to say. I found that picture of the plexiglass that you look through for Let me. I'm going to paste it into Inworld chat. Maybe you can add it to the YouTube channel or something later. But it's freaking awesome. I was digging around. I'm like, where the hell did I put that picture? But I love it. It's like there it is. It's like augmented reality for archaeology with no electronics or technology in the glass.
Absolutely. Yeah, it does the trick. It just does the trick completely, doesn't it?
It's just awesome.
It's for our viewers, we're just looking at a brief picture that you can't see, unfortunately, but it's half a building essentially that still exists. And it's a wireframe reconstruction of the rest of it. But the wireframe is something you only see by standing in front of a simple piece of glass, because that's where the wireframe is printed. And it's very effective, isn't it? It's totally, gives you the sense of depth and, I think particularly the ceiling, the balcony, you get a sense of the full height and the full depth of the building, whereas without that, you just see a bit of stone sticking out the ground.
Yeah. It's somewhere, I can't remember. It's somewhere at, it's German, Augenhof. So it's eye level. I guess they're talking about that's where if you're standing, that's your eye level. I don't know.
I'm showing it on screen right now so people can see.
Oh, you are?
Yep.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, James.
Yep.
I have no idea where it is in the physical world, but I guess you could do a reverse image search for Google for images.
Yeah. The camera wizard is on the scene there. Thank you, James.
Cool. Thanks, James.
Yeah, very good. Okay, we were on closing thoughts, weren't we? So, there's Nova. Anything else that you want to say while you're here? Anything exciting you recently? Doesn't need to be archaeology even. That's been happening or coming up.
Oh my God, this is my soapbox time. Okay.
Yeah.
I am looking forward to my new region. Hint, hint, Chloe. I'm looking forward to brain tapping with James, or I'm sorry, with Pathfinder, because I know he's going to be online. When I go to other regions, I very rarely find anyone online. But I know that Pathfinder is online. So sorry, Pathfinder, I'm going to be your new hemorrhoid.
Oh, boy.
Sorry, what a oh dear, what a phrase. That's never sorry.
It was the cleanest phrase I could come up with. In real life, I hope to be presenting the significance of virtual archaeology to the Society of American Archaeologists, which is a nationwide group. And I really hope to push that door again. And I know they're going to see me coming, so they're probably going to hide.
Wonderful. And also, of course, presenting at VWBP that you mentioned. Oh.
Yes. I am so looking forward to that, and I'm like on pins and needles that they accept my presentation. Chloe and I are both going to be presenting there, so we're both kind of like waiting for the final call. If you want to give us a little hint that we are going to present, that would be great.
We'll just have Kevin Finnan on the show next week or the week after, because it's getting quite close now, oddly enough. So I'll tell him he can't come on unless he guarantees you to a slot.
Actually, I just received my confirmation. I will be presenting.
Oh,
so on the if they build it, they will come.
Oh, very good. Right, nice title too. So you're confirmed. Wonderful. Okay, anything else, Chloe? You're the last in the list of anything else.
I just wanted to throw this out there. I am looking for guinea pigs, children that I can verify are actually children, to come in and do some building soon, so that I have some new building going on. And I do have some kids lined up. And actually, I have a whole homeschool group that's interested in participating. And so but I'm looking for some green kids, some kids that don't have any experience at all, to come in, and so that I can watch them learn to build, and then I'll give them some content to build, and we'll see how that goes.
Oh my God, Chloe, throw them my way after you're done with them, please.
Oh dear. I was just so treat children these days. Come here, throw them over there. Yes, very good. That's probably a message from. So I suspect most of our listeners are adults, of course, because we're generally speaking on mature grids. But it's funny. I know some people in virtual worlds whose kids look at their screen and they let their kids do things under their own adult avatar name, obviously looking over them probably, and yet there are others, who, daddy will be nested or mummy will be nested away doing their online fashions or zombie shooting, and the kids aren't allowed near, kind of thing. So if you've got kids and they don't know about the virtual world and they want to experience it in a grid that is suitable for children and only children, then that seems to be a good little tip there. Get in touch with Chloe.
biomeforkids.blogspot.com is the introduction. It's got instructions how to get an account, and they actually fill out an application, and I approve it or not, but I haven't had any problems. Anyway, so that's it's biomeforkids.blogspot.com.
Right, okay. I'm just, it hasn't got the full address, but I've just put the slide up with the way it's spelled. So Biome for Kids, and then we'll show you that quickly. If James puts the camera there. inworld.blogspot.com. And I was going to ask Nova, a website for you where people can check you out. Oh, have I lost Nova?
No, I'm sorry. I'm here. You can look at the Vibe webpage, and it will list all the places that we have in our Vibe regions. I don't have the website up and ready. Chloe, do you have it?
I suspect a Google for Vibe will probably do it, as long as you make sure you click on something to do with virtual worlds.
Maybe, I don't know. I keep trying to get Maria to
VIBE.
Put us on the active grids, and I haven't seen that happen yet.
The person to get in touch with is probably Third Frederick, because he now runs Hyperico as well as Outworlds, both of which are maintained directories of regions.
Okay, since Chloe is the secondary master of the grid, I'm going to throw all that responsibility on her.
Okay. So she just gives you regions and then has the responsibility for doing everything you want. Yeah.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
She's the leader. Anytime I have a problem, I am her, and then I am Stephen. If she can't fix it, then I know Stephen will.
Very good. Well, that's collaboration for you, isn't it? Glad to hear it.
There you go. I will brain trap anyone that's in my path.
Very good indeed. Okay, well, look, I'm going to call it a wrap for the show this week. I think we've had our fill. I'm sure the two of you are exhausted. It's amazing how time flies on this show. 2 or 3 hours are up before we notice. But it's nice to have these lovely open-ended talks, with no deadline to close by, so to speak. So I'd like to thank you all for being here. I'd like to thank James for multitasking on the cameras and coming up with his quick graphics there, instant graphics when required. So thank you, James.
It's all desktop magic.
Indeed it is.
Great time. Thanks, Mel.
And thank you to Pathfinder, who has been quieter than normal in many ways, but thank you very much for being here and posting in points.
No worries. I mean, I wanted to hear all about the projects that were going on, so I was in sponge mode.
Yeah. Why not? I don't like that. Sponge mode. Yeah, that's a new one. And thank you to Chloe Greenwood.
You're very welcome.
And thank you finally to Nova Saunders.
Oh, Mel, it's always a pleasure hanging out with you. Thank you so much for inviting me. I am absolutely thrilled.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. Pleasure having all of you here, in fact. Now, I have a line I always go out with, but, after that thing, it suddenly occurred to me earlier, I think I should change my sign out loud to something, join us on the perimeter. Outside the box, so to speak. I'll think about that. But for the moment, I'll just go wish you all a very good morning, a very good afternoon, a very good evening, and indeed a good tomorrow, depending on wherever and whenever you are. And we'll be back soon. Bye for now.